Hey everyone, welcome to Property Finance with Lee. Today we're joined by ANJAY from Property Mavens. ANJAY, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite.
ANJAY, why don't we start off with your background and how you got involved in the real estate industry?
Well, I'll try and keep this one short. Bit of a long story, but I'll go through a few details. So in my book that I've written, it goes sort of about properties in my DNA. It's my granddad, my dad's dad. They were immigrants from Poland to New Zealand at the time, and he was a builder. So dad spent a lot of his sort of time after school and uni on the building sites with his dad. So that's kind of where my dad got his background from. And then sort of when I was a teenager, dad started buying property or buying 1 or 2 properties a year and renovating them. So stripping out kitchens, ripping down wallpaper. That's when we had wallpaper back in the day. Painting, ripping up carpet. So we would do cosmetic renos, anywhere from the carpet, flooring, kitchen paint. And I just thought that's what every teenager did, but apparently not. So that's a bit of a background into sort of how I got into property. It was sort of just something that it was a way for Dad and I to bond when I wasn't across playing tennis across the country or overseas. So that's sort of a bit of background there.
Sounds like a similar upbringing to me. My father was much the same. Would work in the building industry and then come home and renovate an investment property they purchased. Again, a lot of cosmetic renovations, very, very similar.
I guess that's kind of where the passion of property came into, where I learned a lot. So I was wanting to go pro with the tennis, but then had a few bad injuries, and then I guess that career sort of dissipated. And then as a result, Mum goes, "Oh, you got to go to uni." So I was good at accounting, good with numbers. But in New Zealand at the time, they had a new degree, which was a Bachelor of Property. So I studied a Bachelor of Property growing up, and that sort of that specialized in development and feasibility. So that's where I guess I could implement my number, taking and sort of analyzing sites. And from what I'd learned as a kid or as a teenager with Dad is, if you bought a property, you could add value to it and that increased the value of the property. So that's sort of something that we've undertaken for the past 20, 25 years. And then that's how that sort of led me to then help others do the same sort of thing.
Right. So it was basically what drew you to being a buyer's agent was your love of property in the property investment industry. But basically, you've continued it through to your professional career. When did you find out buyer's agent was a thing?
2 parts to that. So probably when was it? Probably early 2000s, I wasn't that aware of it, but there was an application for a job for someone to help people buy property, which I now realize what a buyer's agent is. So I went along to the interview and they did all these psych analysis and things like that. And they said I was not suitable. and so it's I thought I'd be quite good at this. So then I kind of went down the real estate agent path, did it for 6 months and hated it. And then left the industry altogether. So I didn't do anything property related for another 7 years. But in that time, to kind of go back from the introduction, over the last 20 years, Dad and I have bought over 45 properties in 3 different countries and renovated or added value to all of them but one. So
wow,
that's kind of where the love of property and knowing you can make significant amounts of money through property just by doing that. And then it wasn't probably till sort of the early 2000, sort of 10 to 12 that I had sort of an accident, and my wife at the time, she said, "You need to do something you love. You love property. You're good at it. What can you do in that area that you can help people?" And so then that's where I came back to the buyer's agent side of things. And it's I've got friends that do this. or people in the industry that I know that do this, and they said you'd be good at it. But I sort of had that sort of fear in the back of the, well, not the fear, but that thought back 10 years ago when the lady said, no, you'd never be good at a buyer's agent. You don't have the right personality or characteristics for it, which is like a shit. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I had so many friends and people going, like, you've done it for yourself, like you've made significant money through investment properties, through renovations, like why don't you help others? And that's kind of how I stumbled into it.
Right. Yeah, Telstra didn't give me a job for the same reason. So apparently didn't have the right personality to work at a Telstra head office. So anyways, we're here today. So you did you start your real estate career, because you're based right now in Albury, aren't you? Did you
I'm in
start
Albury.
in Albury?
No. So I started in Sydney, lived in Sydney for 17 years and been in Albury for the last 4.
Okay.
I've been buying in Albury for the last 10 years. So I was
Right.
buying Sydney and Albury, and there is 2 different markets. I guess the Sydney market, I was catering more for the owner occupiers. Budgets were probably roughly sort of around that $2 to $10 million range. And then from the investment side of things, I was coming across people like back sort of between 2012 to 2016, as an example. You had people that had $200,000 to $300,000 as a borrowing capacity, and then all like the project marketers or the people selling off the plan stuff saying, "Oh, you need minimum 350, 400. We can't help you." And it's just like, and so people come to me and they'd say, "Oh, we can't invest. We don't have enough money." I'm going, I beg to differ. It's just because when we first started, like we only started with 100, 150,000. So,
Right.
so Albury had all the fundamentals that I liked. So you've got what drew me to Albury Wodonga is it's on the way to Melbourne. So you're sort of 3 to 3.5 hours from Melbourne, 5 to 5.5 hours from Sydney, 3 hours from Canberra. But you got more fundamentals than most capital cities. So you got 2 university, 2 TAFEs, 2 private hospitals, 2 public hospitals. The New South Wales and Victoria spending $500 million on a brand new hospital. Then you've got ATO. You've got one of the largest defence forces as a barrack, but also as a manufacturer that supplies all the sort of tanks and military vehicles up to North Queensland, Darwin. So they go up by train. Then you've got construction, you've got logistics and manufacturing, you've got agriculture, tourism. Like with all that, that's driven capital growth over the last 10 years, and that will keep on growing over the next 20 years. So as a result,
a lot of people would be surprised to hear that Albury had all that.
Yeah, they are.
I think they would be shocked.
Every time I mention it, they go, "We didn't know," or "We weren't aware." It's just like, why would you? It's just like, if you don't know much about Albury or don't know where it is, that's why it's my kind of little golden nugget and gem. And so back 10 years ago, when I was buying properties for people, we were buying them sort of buying houses on 700, 800 square meters or bigger for between 150 to 200,000. Those properties are now worth sort of 450 to 600. So the people that are helped in the early stages have had significant increases, and we've bought multiple methods that use the equity to. Like one of my clients, for example, he only had a budget of 200, and he goes, "Can you help?" I'm going, "Sure." So like, bought the home for 200. It was renting for 320. That rent's now for 500. It's now worth 450, 500. But he used that sort of $200,000 equity uplift to buy him and his wife their forever home in Motorvale. So we got that for 1.9. I bought that 300 grand under market value, and that's worth now 3. So it doesn't matter what stage you are in, I guess, your cycle, whether you're a new investor, first time investor, seasoned investor, there's budgets and properties out there for everybody. It's never too late.
I think that's the one thing people don't understand. I've been telling people on my channel, for the last 6 months, look, the first property you buy might not be your dream property. It's probably not even going to be in the same suburb as you're currently renting in, but just buy something. Get into the market, buy something. Those properties, the early clients that you serviced and the incredible capital growth they had, They were also getting a very, very high yield all the way along, it sounds like. So,
Correct. So back then, they would have been getting 7 to 8%, which is not the norm now for Albury Wodonga. It's, I guess, since COVID, I feel the market caught up to where Albury Wodonga needed to be price wise. So there was some huge jumps. So
okay.
the rental returns, and it depends what parts of Albury Wodonga you look at. Like sort of your more high end areas of homes, you're looking at the 4 to 5% yield, which is still higher once again than sort of your Ballarat, your Bendigos, your Geelongs, even Sydney, Melbourne. They're ridiculous. Like, and even Brisbane, the returns are still higher than that. The sort of outer suburbs, where the sort of slightly cheaper properties are, you're sort of looking at that 5 to 7%. That sort of 5 to 6 is quite general, but there's creative ways of increasing that too. So some of the properties that I buy, we can furnish, and then you either lease it out as a furnished property. You can do it as an Airbnb. You can do it as shared living. There's a lot of people in the region that can't necessarily afford the full lease, but they can afford $275 to $300 a week. So that can significantly increase your rental returns at the same time. So it's when I do look for properties, I assess all parts of how can we maximize the rental return for the client, and how can we find that property that's also going to give you the capital growth. And Albury's, over the last 10 years, year on year, consistently has been growing by 8 to 10% per annum. Like a bad year might be 6 or 7.
If someone came to you and they said, Anjay, I don't have a large amount of borrowing capacity, what's the absolute, entry level investment property I can purchase in Albury? What's the bare minimum, or the starting cost, let's say?
Yeah, it kind of goes back a step. It's
Okay.
more about, you got to, like in my book I explain this too. It's like the first step's planning. It's not your buying. It's like the purchasing part comes step 5. It's the planning part. Like what's your strategy? So the planning. And then finance is quite correlated with that. So like, let's say spoken to yourself, they go, all right, Lee, we've got 250, or we've got 350, or we've got 400, whatever that price point is. Like at 250, we're going to get a unit. You're not getting a house.
Yeah.
And it's like the units don't go up by more than houses. Like obviously land appreciates more than buildings. But as a starting point, if they're wanting to get into the market, okay, yes, you can spend that 250, go in the middle of the book, and get no capital growth for the next 10 years, but you'll get a high rental return. But then if let's say if we looked at Albury Wodonga, we're looking for a 2-bedroom unit, I'm finding opportunities where agents, for whatever reason, can't price properties. There might be one that's listed there for 180 to 200. And then you could spend 10, 15 grand doing a minor reno, and it's worth 250 to 300. Utilize that. Okay, you're not going to get huge long-term growth like out of a unit, but if you can increase the equity on a unit by $30,000, $50,000, $80,000, that's then your deposit for the next one. I'm always looking to find a property that we can buy under market value and where we can add value.
So basically, if you're in Sydney and you're thinking, I can't buy an investment property here, for as little as say $200,000, you could be investing in Albury.
Yes, but I would say to people, you can work with a 250K budget, but realistically, if we're looking at houses, I'd say 4 to 600 is kind of your medium value, but we can find something that you can add value to it. Some of those properties might be big enough where you can subdivide and put another house on there.
Right. So you're comfortable at that 4 to 600,000 range, which is still incredibly, achievable for a lot of people. It's
correct.
It's not Sydney prices. So
no, it's like the 4 to 600 I can do a lot with. Like anything under 300, it's doable, but it's tougher. But it's going to be a unit, and you just got to be a little bit like it can be a stepping stone. But it's just like most people I've come across have sort of got that sort of 4 to 600K budget. Anything more than that, then it just opens up the doors to different opportunities.
I understand what you're saying. I think the reason I bring it up is because I think a lot of people would find it amazing that you could even purchase something for for 200. You know,
Yeah.
it's very interesting. So, have you got any examples of things you've purchased around that four to five, $600,000 mark? You know, the types of yields we're talking, kind of rental returns. Have you?
Yep, we've got many. So let's start off a
Okay.
few. So yesterday was a good example. I signed up a client a couple of weeks ago. He's a nurse from Melbourne, had some money that obviously that he wanted to invest in, being recommended to us. The budget he'd given me initially was 600, and he's more of, and I get these people a lot, but he's more of a set and forget. He doesn't want to renovate. He doesn't want to add value. Not something he's comfortable with because
He just doesn't want to deal with the dramas. He just wants to start earning a return, basically.
correct. Yeah. And that we sort of, in our process and in our sort of strategy sessions with people, we determine, are you low risk, moderate risk, or high risk? If you're a high risk, you're probably like me and you'll do renovation developments, you'll risk a lot. If you're low risk, you just kind of want set and forget and little to low maintenance as possible. So he could stretch to the sixes because I was saying to him, I'm going, there's some homes between 5 and 600, but they're going to need a little bit of work. And I understand that that's kind of not your risk profile. But I go, I found a property that's above the 600, but it ticks all your boxes. So the scenario of this one was, it was listed before Christmas for 680. They had an offer in the first week of 665 and they knocked it back. And as a result, they've moved out, they'd bought something else, and they were desperate to sell. So the agents in the area, they all know who I am. They go, ANJAY, we're desperate. Can you help us out? I'm going, sure. So we purchased it yesterday for 613,000.
Wow.
Pretty much 70 grand under what it was initially listed at, and 50 odd thousand less than the last offer. And that would rent for 670 per week. So you're looking at a sort of 5.5% to 6% return.
That's phenomenal. Wow.
So that's and that was a 4-bed, 2-bath, 2-garage, double living, and that was probably only about 10 years old. So good home.
For the Sydney siders out there, my family has a property in Ramsgate, and property is probably worth around 2.2, and I'm pretty sure the rent's around that. Pretty good rent. Good rental return there.
Yeah. Another example, if we're going sort of down the budget path, I had Glenn who has bought a property before. I had a budget for him for 500. He loves renovation projects, so he's the flip side.
Right.
There was a property that was off market. The agent had listed it at 450. I knew it was worth probably closer to 480 to 500, but I was going to keep my mouth shut. I said, I go, oh, Mike, that's a bit steep. 450. Offered him 420 and we bought it for 430.
Oh, you're joking.
No. And then Glenn spent 15 grand on new carpet, paint, blinds and lights. So
that's it.
3-bed, 2-bath. Now we're 500 to 530, getting 500 a week rent.
That's great. Have you got an example of one where you've got someone, say, interstate, they've come to you for an investment property, you've found them a property that you think, could do with a bit of a renovation and add market value, something you can sell, a year, 2 years down the line. Has anyone come to you with a scenario like that and you've been able to get things like trades in order? Do you have people down there like painters, builders, that sort of thing, that can put things together for people?
Yeah, so the last one that I mentioned for Glenn, so I've got all like the builders, you've got the tradies, so you've got the painters, the electricians, the plumbers, the flooring people. Essentially, that's kind of part of my team. It's because it's kind of what I love to do. It's just like, it's a value add service that I offer. Like, I wouldn't say many or any other buyer's agents have the investment insight or the renovation, I guess, experience and knowledge that I have. So it's part of me building my team. And because people go, oh, I understand that added value is going to help us significantly, but they go, we don't have the time. We go, that's cool. I'll manage it. All good. So that was an example of where I can do that.
So do you provide like a feasibility study for a particular property? This is around what it's going to cost you to paint it. This is around what it's going to cost you to add a granny flat. Do you do that as a part of your service?
It's kind of part of my overview because with our process, we give people a prosperity plan. So that sort of determines your sort of risk profile, the suburbs that we're going to target, sort of what vacancy rates are, what the median house price is. Then in my shortlisting process, when looking at properties, I look at both on market and off market. Not every property I look at ticks the boxes. We've got our own IP around a scorecard. So it's a 57-point attribute checklist. It has to tick about 80% of those boxes for us to say, yes, this one meets the criteria. And then we sort of provide the CMA reports, regional reports, and then sort of my analysis, like especially more for the value add type of properties. It's like, all right, let's say if the property was 600,000, we're going to need about 30 odd thousand. Like I'll give rough numbers because it depends on that person. If they're going to do the renovation straight away, then I introduce them to the builder, but I have rough idea of what the numbers are. So it might be 30K to do kitchen, bathroom, flooring, paint. Like that might be on the high side. It could be a bit lower, but
Yeah.
The price of the property, I have a good idea of what that's worth. So I said, if you spent this 30 grand, this property would now be worth 700 or 750 or whatever those numbers are. So I give them that in the early stages so they have an idea of what that property would be worth if they did a reno or when they do the reno. For subdivision side of things, I have the builders that I trust and use, and I've got rough numbers of what they would be, give or take.
It's really interesting. I think with a town like Albury, it would be very easy to assume the whole town sort of operates in a similar market. Is there varying markets within Albury? Is it big enough to have different markets?
What do you mean by different markets?
So are there certain suburbs that outpace other suburbs? Are there certain sectors of Albury, perhaps areas around distribution centres that perform a certain way?
So you got Albury Wodonga. So Albury's New South Wales, Wodonga's Victoria. You got about 110, 120,000 people across the two. Let's say we choose Albury, for example. Central Albury and East Albury is more like your Sydney and Melbourne. You'll get high capital growth, anywhere from 8 to 13% year on year. It's your homes. I was speaking to someone yesterday. He was surprised that a lot of the homes in Central and East Albury are between 1 to 3 million. It's like he goes,
Wow.
it's like Sydney prices. And it's like, yeah, you have expensive homes at Albury. And so in Central and East, you're more like the medium house price is probably more around that 800,000. So if you're looking for the capital growth and not so worried about the cash flow, then and you got a budget of 800K plus, then all Central East Albury is an area that I'd target. Your rate of return there is probably between your 4 to 5, give or take.
And that's the New South Wales side of Albury
Correct.
Wodonga, isn't it?
Yeah. New South Wales, you pay less stamp duty. So it's 4% compared to Victoria, which is closer to 5%. And then, so outside of, I guess, Central and East Albury, you've got the outer suburbs where they're sort of, you're probably more 6 to 8% capital growth, but then your rental returns are 5 to 6%. But then your price points, as what we sort of discussed earlier, are more that 400 to 800.
Okay.
So depending on your budget, it's kind of depending on the location where I tend to look.
So it's not just a matter of shoving $600,000 in Albury Wodonga and hoping for the best. You need to have local knowledge of whereabouts within that town to invest.
Correct. Yeah, definitely. Like I know people that have spent $600,000 on a property as an investment and it hasn't done much. So it's just like, A, you got to know, are you overpaying? B, is it a pocket where it's going to get the capital growth? It's like, yeah, it's not all same. It's just, you've got to pick your sort of streets or your locations smartly.
Right.
And that's why moving to Albury 4 years ago was was the key, because there are no buyer's agents here. I inspect all the properties physically myself. I'm not one of these borderless buyer's agents that will be in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, wherever, and go and just call the agent. It's like, what have you got? What's the price? We'll just pay it. They don't expect it. They'll just get the agent or the property manager to do a video. It's just like, I don't agree with that. It's like, I want to check it out for myself. Because at the end of the day, it's like I'm spending $500, $600, $800 million of someone else's money. It's just like, if they were wanting to buy something sight unseen, they'd do it themselves. My thoughts are, you're hiring a buyer's agent, they should be inspecting it themselves.
For sure. And I mean, you've got a pretty high conviction about that area. You've been purchasing there for the last 10 years, and you went out and moved there specifically for this reason 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So you've definitely got the conviction for it.
A little gold mine. It's like I'm incorporating for the higher end people. Like I deal with a lot of people that have like got budgets anywhere from 1 to 10 million, and there's still capacity there. Like I've taken sort of the Sydney duplex model and brought it to Albury, and we've kind of reverse engineered that for the last 12 months. Like I've got an architect and design team that, because in New South Wales, we can, if you've got the right attributes of a property, we can do an application through CDC, which is Compliant Development Code, rather than a DA. So that just means you can get a private certifier to sign off on the plans and do that within sort of 4 to 8 weeks, rather than have to be in council for 3 to 6 months.
So it doesn't hit council.
Doesn't go to council at all.
Doesn't hit. Wow, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, so I'll find a property that's got minimum 600 square meters. I'll look for a 16-meter frontage as an example. And the reason why I look for 16 meters is because you can get double garage both sides.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to do one of these myself. I'm just in the process of doing it. So we're reverse engineered with the architect. We've got the builder. So we're doing slightly different construction. We've got a commercial builder and a residential builder. So we're using the commercial builder for concrete tilt panels. So that brings down the cost. But also I feel it helps in terms of insulation and noise from your neighbor, because we're doing a common wall down the middle.
There's nothing better than that.
Yeah. And then you got...
It's like double brick. It's better than double brick.
It is better than double brick. Like I live in one at the moment. So like I'm used to it. I understand it. I know it. It brought, like, because when I was doing the pricing for a duplex was double brick, or just not even double brick, a brick veneer, it was going to cost 1.25 to 1.3 mil for a 500 square meter build, so 250 each side. With this builder, we've been able to get it down to 2,000 square meter, so about $1 million. So we're saving 250 grand on the build.
Jeez. So you're building right now for 2,000 a square meter?
For this project, yes.
Wow.
So the numbers on a duplex project, like I'm buying property in the locations that I've picked out between 600 and 700. We're spending 1.15 like on the build, which includes like your landscaping, your driveway, your fencing, your subdivision, and your site costs. And these are worth anywhere between 1.3 to 1.5 each once done. So you're looking at almost the 25% return, where if you did this in Sydney, you're looking at 13 or 15 if you're lucky, and it's half the amount. You're in for about 1.8, and they're worth 2.5 to 2.8. And that's why, like, this has taken sort of 2 years to go about, because I've got local builders who are keen on the idea, but then when I was dealing with investors, they go, we want 20% plus. Everyone wants 20% plus. So I'm going, and no one can categorically tell you I can get 20% plus. And at the time I said I can get close to it, but it's kind of can be there or not quite there, but it depends on quite a few things. It depends on how cheap I can get the land. But if we've got a good location, you're going to have to pay a good price. So that's why for 12 months, we started having conversations with some of the locals, and like I've been adverse to tilt panels for quite a while now. And it's just, we've got a collaboration with 2 builders where it's like, all right, we'll do the tilt panels. And these guys are looking at doing it in Sydney and other places as well, because we know we can minimize and reduce the building costs significantly, which then brings the profits up for the investor or the developer.
Phenomenal. Very interesting. You know, when you have a client that you've taken on, you've sat with, you've given them all the figures, and you know, one comes to mind that you've referred to me actually, and
Like,
they just they just don't want to take your advice.
Hmm.
How do you deal with that?
Oh, quite easily these days. It's when you've been through what I've been through in life and thrown some curveballs and suffered some pretty bad health issues, and you've overcome those, and even in tennis, like you have setbacks, and then now I think moving to the country has made me realize it's like living in Sydney and Melbourne or the big cities is not the be all and end all. Like now for me, it's more about my lifestyle, my health, my family, and my relationships with people. And when you come across the person, like the person that I referred to, it's like with what he was looking for, what he was trying to achieve, and the property he was looking like up in Queensland, it didn't make sense. And like for me, it's just like I could easily, I'd found him something in Albury that would have ticked the boxes. It would have gone the rental return he needs, and it was for a super fund. It's not as if he could live in the property. It's
We'll give the audience a background. So basically, this person wanted to purchase something within their self-managed super fund. He didn't have finance sorted. Actually, didn't even know he needed a bare trust to purchase a property that requires finance within the SMSF. So ANJAY referred him on to me. I had a chat with him. I went through all his servicing, and it was good because me and ANJAY worked together and knew what ANJAY was able to purchase and find for him. We sort of knew what the property was going to cost, the rental return. So everything's all good. And at the last minute, he goes from wanting to invest in Albury to all of a sudden wanting to invest on the Gold Coast. Recently, it's been as far north as the Sunshine Coast. And I kept getting linked to all these properties that had huge body corporate fees that simply didn't work. You know, it's very important, and this probably brings us on to the next question of, you know, how important industry collaborations are. It's very important. Guys, if you're out there and you're investing, all your ships have to sail in the same direction. You know, this particular client, he had a great opportunity to have his mortgage broker, his buyer's agent, all fully versed, you know, knowing exactly what he was capable of purchasing. Unfortunately, he's gone off the beaten path and he's still looking. And I think I don't know how long it's been. It's got to be at least 8 months. He's still looking for a property, ANJAY?
Yeah, it's been 8 months. To be honest, I don't know if he'll buy. It's I guess
No worries.
you got the analogy. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink it. And going back to your question, it's like, how do you deal with people like that? I'll give people, I'm straight up. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I'll tell them, like with what he was looking for, like he had, let's say 600,000, he was going, oh yeah, I can't find anything decent in the Gold Coast. Like I want a good return or capital growth. He was looking at properties that had like body corporates of 8,000 to 10,000 a year. The rental return was terrible. It's just like, we're trying to set up your retirement, your SMSF. You've got to choose this strategically. I can find you a property for 600, getting you 650, 670 a week rent, which is going to give you capital growth, which is what you want for your super fund. So sometimes you just can't help those people. Like, I'll educate them. If they don't come on board, nothing personal. It's like, because I know there are plenty of clients that I help and have helped that you make a difference. Like the one yesterday, he called me a miracle worker because he didn't know how I could get a property 50 or 60K less than what they'd listed it for or been offered like 4 weeks prior. So it's not a one-off. Like these things happen all the time. Like last year, I helped a lady by the name of Pip. She's from Brisbane. She'd bought 2 investments in Brisbane, which haven't done very well. They've actually gone backwards in terms of capital value. They got a good rental return, but she doesn't want to sell it at a loss. So she goes, she'd give me a budget of 500. That's all I had. There was a property that came up off market from the agent that I know, and that their situation is they kind of had to sell as well. That was worth 530 to 550. We got it for 498, 500, and that rents for 550 per week. So it's
phenomenal. I made the point just so people out there, they understand how important it is when you're making an investment to remove the emotion from it. You know, this particular client, completely driven by emotion. Any property he will purchase within his SMSF, he can't live in anyways.
no.
You know, it's not something. It's just got to be a mathematical equation. You know, it doesn't make what's a yield, what's a projected, capital growth, great investment. Can't help everyone, Anjay.
You got to look at it logically, and he's not looking at it logically. As you said, he's looking at it emotionally, and you
Yes.
can't look at a property investment emotionally. It's technically a business. It's something that's a 5, 10, 20 year plus thing, and that's how you got to look at it. It's when we first started out
Absolutely.
20 plus years ago, it wasn't a get rich quick thing. It was we had extra funds that we could spend, and we knew how to renovate. And that's how it started off. And the properties we're buying were 100, 200, 300,000. Move on 10, 20 plus years, the properties that we buy to renovate are more like 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. It's the same process, but it just takes time, and you build up your equity bank. Like one of the projects that we've done in the last few years is, and these numbers quite outstanding, but there was a property that was listed for 4.5 million, and it had been on the market for a while. The tenancy in place was for 2 years, and the rental return wasn't. Yeah, and they had an option to take on the third year. They had the option, not the vendor or the landlord. So
Was it a commercial property, Anjay?
that was a residential property, and
Wow.
so yeah, so like it was a $4.5 million property, but because of those factors, like an owner occupier wouldn't buy it because it would take them 1.5 to 2 years before they could move into it. It wasn't good for an investor because the rental return wasn't good. So we put an offer of 3.45 and got it. But that was like we only had to wait a year, and that was fine because we were doing another renovation project at the time. That was since then spent another 500,000 on just an internal reno, but that property is now worth close to 7 mil.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter what price point. The higher you spend, the more money you can make. But it's the same process.
Percentages are similar, might be similar, but the actual dollar gained more.
It's higher. Yeah, correct.
I'm surprised actually when you mentioned all the things going on in Albury, actually how big it is. So there's 120,000 people living there.
And there's growth for another 10 to 20,000 over the next 5 to 10 years.
It's a pretty big percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, you've got Albury that's in New South Wales. You've got Wodonga that's in Victoria. We've all seen the news. Victoria seems to have a war against landlords at the moment.
Yeah.
Have you noticed since these laws have come out or been proposed that there's been a drop in Wodonga or money shifting from Wodonga into Albury? Have these laws made an impact yet?
I would say yes for the Melbourne investors. So like our head office is in Melbourne, and my colleagues down there tend to buy either Melbourne, Geelong, Bendigo, Ballarat. And so I've got significant amount of referrals from them, and even the financial planners or accountants down in that area for the Albury side. And it's more because at the time you had Dictator Dan, and no one knew what was going to happen, or they still don't know what's happening. But it's like the Victorians have made it a bit more challenging or difficult for landlords and for investors. So by bypass scenarios, because being on the border, it's I can easily head into New South Wales. So I've had a lot of clients from Melbourne last year that purely wanted the New South Wales side.
Right.
For some people, it doesn't matter, but yeah, in quite like probably 4 or 5 circumstances last year, uh, the referrals that came through were don't want to invest in Victoria. Can we do New South Wales?
What tends to be cheaper in terms of stamp duties, fees, that sort of thing? It does New South Wales tend to be cheaper?
New South Wales is a lot cheaper. You're looking at 4% roughly compared to Victoria. It's 5.
Okay.
So on a $500,000 purchase, you're looking at $5,000.
Does the first time buyers grants vary between the two states?
They do. They're similar, but it's slightly varied. Obviously, every state varies. Like,
Yeah.
like New South Wales is up to, I think, 800,000 exemption, and then between 800 and a mil is tiered.
How do you see the area growing in the next 10 years? You've been there sort of investing in there for the last 10. How do you see the next 10 going in Albury?
Same trajectory. It's because of what they've proposed in the master plan, like with the $500 million hospital coming in, that creates jobs, keeps jobs. That's a lot of infrastructure spend. One of the suburbs, Saguna, like their master plan over the next 34 years is to have a population of 50,000 people. Now that's
Wow.
yeah, and that's just for one suburb. So there's a lot more growth to come. You've already got an airport here. Like we don't know what's going to happen down the track, but then it's the third busiest regional airport in the country behind, I guess, Newcastle and North Queensland.
Is it really?
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised at some stage down the track, there has been plans to extend the runways so you can get bigger planes. So then that would cater for more direct flights to all the capital cities around the country, or even international. I don't know if it'll go international, but at least around the country. So I think what's good, just got Bonza that's come in, and the Albury leg of that has become the most popular. So Albury does direct flights to the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast.
Really?
Yeah. So I come up every sort of June/July to play tennis in the Gold Coast. And then in September, I fly to Sunshine Coast and play at Tewantin, where before I drive up to Sydney, park my car at my house up there, and then fly from Sydney to the Sunshine Coast. And that's like a day's worth of travel, where now it's just you can fly direct. And the flights are, I think, 3 times a week. So they're pretty regular. Albury flies to Adelaide.
Reasonable? Are flight prices tend to be reasonable?
Oh, it's dirt cheap. So if you book it sort of well in advance, like I went the extras, I paid for the very front row, so you paid $10 extra for the front row seat. I paid an extra, I think, $10 or $20 for an extra bag because I had my suitcase and then I had my tennis bag. So I had 2 suitcases, like 27 kilos for one suitcase, I had 15 kilos for the other. I had the premium seat, and it was $220 return.
Geez, that's cheap. My wife's family is from the Batlow, Riverina sort of area, and I remember flying into I think it was Wagga. I flew into, believe it was Wagga. Yeah, that was cost a fortune. Yeah, I think I had to get a flight from the Gold Coast to Sydney into Wagga. It was not cheap. So that's great. That's a very good time for Albury if they got a direct flight to the Gold Coast.
That happened last year. So usually, like if you would fly to Wagga, it's like your flight from Queensland to Sydney is $200 to $300 return. Then from Sydney to Wagga, you got to fly Rex more often than not, and then that's going to be $250. So you're looking at $550, $600 return. Where now, like if you didn't have all the upgrades that I did, you could do like normal seat, one bag for I think $80 or $90 each way.
That's a big deal. You know, these sorts of things are the things that determine whether people invest in the city or not. Their accessibility to other parts of the country is very important.
Yeah, it's good for me because I play sport nationally and internationally. It's easy for me to get to Melbourne. It's like I can fly to Sydney if I want to fly to Sydney. I can drive there if I need to drive. But getting up to the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast now, I don't have to make those big journeys to the capital cities to get up there, which cuts down like so much significant time and money. So I think that
Yeah.
what that also does, it's not just the economy, us going up to the Queensland area for holidays, like you're now getting the Queensland people coming down, because we've also got some of the best ski slopes. We've got Mount Beauty or Falls Creek, which is only an hour outside of Albury. So you've got some of the best ski fields. You got the Rutherglen wineries, which is only about half an hour to an hour away. So you got some of the biggest wineries. You've got the hill country. You've got like Bright. So you've got a lot to do. You got the Lake Weir Dam, so a lot of water sports. So people got their boats. They're doing their sort of jet skis.
Sounds like it's got a lot to offer. And you got the Department of Defence down there as well. What kind of a base is it?
There's a facility down here which stores what does it do? It's the midpoint for a lot of the aircrafts, helicopters, tanks, military vehicles. It's the storage before it gets distributed around the country. It's kind of a gateway, but it's a transit area. Let's say a transit area for defence machinery.
And where it's positioned, it's not going to go anywhere. It's needed there, obviously.
And then you've got the actual barracks down there, which caters for thousands of people. But also you've got, that's where a lot of the military vehicles are also built.
Okay. Seems like there's a good amount of industry,
Yeah.
good amount of professional services.
You've got corporates, you've got Visi, you've got Mars Pet Care, you've got the Woolworths Distribution Centre. So it caters all industries, and that's what drew me towards it.
It's very interesting. It sounds like the 100 or so thousand people that are there need to be there. You know, it's not one of these towns where it's sort of a town that's dying, that sort of got this lingering population that's sort of stuck in limbo. It sounds like there's jobs and stuff that have drawn people to that town. Very important.
Yeah. You got growth, and growth, obviously, like if your properties are going to grow, you need population growth, and you need obviously industry drivers that aren't reliant just on one. Like it's not just related to the mining sector. It's not just related to agriculture. It's like you've got all these which kind of make it the perfect storm, is per se. Like a good example to give you is post-COVID, we saw a decline in property prices in Sydney and Melbourne quite significantly, as well as the rest of the country. When the rest of the country was going down, Albury was going up. So that's why I look for stable markets, and that's why I have a lot of trust and faith in the area. It's like when your two biggest capital cities were taking a negative trajectory, Albury was still going up.
It's a very good sign.
And it's not what happens around the rest of the country. Albury's like doesn't apply to Albury. For whatever reason, it's its own mini economy.
Yeah, like I said, I think the main reason, as far as I can tell after our conversation, is the fact that those people that are there need to be there. The jobs are there for them. A lot of the things that scare the average person away from investing in a regional town don't seem to be evident.
No,
You know, you don't have a population going backwards. You have ample jobs. You have growth. You know, you've got infrastructure spending. You got state government spending. It's got everything there.
Yeah, it's got all the drivers. And that's why I like it. Like, because people ask me, they go, "Oh, do you look at other areas? Do you look at South Australia? Do you look at Queensland? Do you look at Perth?" And I'm going, I look at them, but I just don't invest in them. It's like,
Yes.
It's that some people may or may not like, but in the 20 plus years I've been investing, I've only bought one property in Queensland for a client, and that was because they insisted that that's where they wanted it. So that kind of says something for someone that's bought the amount of properties that were bought where it never looked there. It's just, for me, there's better places to park your money and to buy a property that can get you the capital growth and the cash flow. It's same with the Perth market. You got to time the market rather than time in the market. Perth is so volatile. It's almost like the North Koreans. When things go up, they do go up significantly well, but then when they come down, they drop by just as much. So you really have to time the market there. So, but if you got people that are low risk and not that risk adverse, you definitely want to put them in Perth because, and it depends what part of the time in the market. Like if they're buying the peak, which is kind of now in Perth,
everything's going gangbusters there now.
It may do nothing for the next 5 to 10 years, and then so the ship sailed with Perth. Like to buy in Perth, you should have bought 12 to 24 months ago. If you're buying now, I'd just say
You think it's too late down there?
I feel so. Go to the casino, put on black or red, you got a better chance.
I'm amazed actually what's going on in that state. It seems like the demand there is endless and just there's no supply. Absolutely, it's crazy. The actual fundamentals there, it's insane. Seem to be getting a lot of interstate migration there, which is the only thing that makes me question that. The interstate migration is very, very high, and they're not all moving there for mining. We're going to have to see. The history of the WA market has shown us that it can change very quickly. So I guess we're going to have to get you on to see what's happened in 12 months' time and have a laugh about it.
It's just not something I've touched, but it's like I've got relationships with buyers agents around the country. So if people don't necessarily want Victoria, New South Wales, I've got contacts for Queensland, WA, South Australia. So that's easy to sort out. Like there's still very good operators in all the different states, and not saying that those markets aren't worthwhile investing in. It's just not. So I know where I can make money for people. I know how to make money for people. I improved it for myself. So I stick to what's tried and tested, and that's what gives me a repeat business, new clients, ongoing clients.
Absolutely. I mean, if anyone sees your history, they'll understand that you've got the conviction in that area. You're invested in that area. It's just the figures we talked about today. It's crazy, the returns, even the opportunities after all this amazing capital growth they've had. Crazy. So ANJAY,
yes,
we want to give our audience something. I've had a couple of buyers agents on in the last few weeks, and I like teasing the audience. I want them to understand what the value of using a buyer's agent is, because see, a lot of people are sitting at home and they think, why should I give this person X amount of money when I can go and find a property myself? Yada, 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 right? But I like providing people with properties which I know they wouldn't otherwise have access to. Because I know you guys have access to a lot of off-the-market properties. You often get properties come past your desk before they hit realestate.com. I was speaking to a buyer's agent the other day, and they said apparently 20% of property transactions in New South Wales happen before it even hits realestate.com. So people are already missing 1/5 of the properties before they hit the market. Have you got any properties right now that you believe are an absolute steal? They're a good buy, rate of return's good. Something our audience would be interested in. Don't give specifics. They need to use your service.
Yeah, I get properties sent to me daily. I bought a couple yesterday that were actually off market, but an example, I'll give some examples of a few different price points. There was one that I saw yesterday that is worth probably around that 440, 450. Would look at purchasing it for around that 390, 400. It's just had new carpet, new paint going. To add value down the track, you'd do kitchen, bathroom, lighting, and blinds. Like that probably should be worth sort of that 480 to 520. So that's sort of the lower price point. And then you got
what could that rent out for, ANJAY, that property?
If you had about 450, 500 a week.
Wow. So this is something that could easily fit into a lot of people's self-managed super funds. If you've got between 150 and 180 grand in your SMSF, you could probably slot that property in. No dramas. So that's a good one.
Yep. There's another one that was listed for 650, 4-bed, 2-bath, double garage. Owner wants to sell. You could pick that up for around 600, 610. That would rent for around that 630 to 670 per week. There's plenty of opportunities. There's always, there's plenty. What else did I see
Is
yesterday?
renting them out easy, Anjay? Is it easy to rent out these properties?
Yeah, the vacancy rate's less than 0.5%. So there's,
Wow.
yeah, it's renting them out's not the hard part. It's like choosing which application to go with.
So let me get this right. So right now, Albury Wodonga, in terms of vacancy rate, is below the national average
Correct.
as a regional town.
Correct.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Wow.
Yep. Another.
That's probably the most important metric we've said today, I think.
Yeah, like there's a rental crisis locally. It's tough to get. So that's why I get creative with the sort of the leasing side of things, because there are people that just are looking to rent rooms. So it's just like if you've got a 3-bedroom home, 2 baths, 2 living, like it makes it's not a rooming house, but you call it shared living. People will pay $250 to $300 per week, as long as there's sort of electricity and internet provided, which can obviously increase the rental income. Another, I guess, an off market is a block of units. They're on one title. You're kind of looking around that sort of 1.1 million. Current rental is at 6.5%, which is under. It should be closer to that 8 to 10. If you spent $100,000 on the renovation, you'd have an uplift of at least sort of $400,000 to $500,000. So it's
how many units are in there?
Can't give the specific number, but there's around 6.
Okay.
You can potentially strata them off as long as you sort of upgraded the firewalls or just got that inspected, but you could easily strata them off.
If you were going to rent them out, you probably would want to leave it as is, because you'd then have all the rates, the extra rates and everything every year. So
Correct.
If it's purely for holding as an investment, would you recommend just leaving it as is?
I'd leave it as is.
Yeah.
Like if you're getting an 8 to 10% yield, you just won't touch it. You'd strata them when it comes to if you ever wanted to sell.
Yeah.
I know of another block of units that are coming up, but yeah, these properties may not last, but these are the sorts of opportunities that I look at every day, every week. And whether it's not always about off markets. Like, yeah, people say, "Oh, I can find you off markets." Off market doesn't mean it's an A grade investment. Like, we only look at an A grade investment property.
That's true.
It's something off market's a terrible, a shithouse. It's
yeah.
Another property that I've looked at recently it was on 800 square meters. You've got partially renovated home at the front, tidy enough, but the back portion of the land is about 400 square meters. You could easily build another home at the back. You could put 3-bed, 2 baths, double garage for about $350, and it'll be worth $600. So you've got the set and forget, you've got the cheaper end, you've got subdivisions, you got the blocks of units, and then you've got the the duplex projects where you can sort of, if you got sort of that 1.8 to 2 million, buy the land, build a duplex. I can cater for
no matter what people want to invest in, there's a flavor for everyone. And a price point, it seems, for everyone.
And if you're down at the $200,000 mark, we'll find you a unit that's suitable.
So, ANJAY, if our audience wants to get a hold of you to utilize your service, how can they contact you?
Easiest is mobile. I don't know if you're going to put the details in the...
I will. I'll pop all the details down the bottom.
Mobile, email, but generally text or email or call. They're their easiest.
Yeah. And I can attest that ANJAY is very accessible. Give him a call. Guys, there's absolutely no excuse. You know, if you're living in Sydney, and I've got friends, I'm saying this too. I was just speaking to the other day. If you're living in Sydney and you have difficulties getting into the property market, there's no excuses. Okay? There's price points from as low as $200,000 that ANJAY can get you into. So give ANJAY a call, let him find you something, enter the market, and, you know, start your journey towards a property that you want to live in one day. You know, it doesn't have to be the first one, but start your journey. I think that's the most important thing, right?
Definitely. I think the biggest thing that I encourage and sort of educate people on is the best time to invest was yesterday. But if you didn't do it yesterday, start today. You got to start somewhere. I know the biggest hurdle is taking that first step. But once you've taken that first step and you got the first property, you're then well on your way to retire in 10 years' time. And people don't realize that and how easy it could be. And you may be the most least risk averse person, but if you bought that first property at 400,000 in 3 years' time, it's now worth 500, 550. You've now got 100, 150 grand's worth of equity to then conservatively buy another one and have it paying itself off. And you may do that 4 times over the next 4 years. Now, you could sell 2 of them and have the first 2 or the second 2 paid off and be living off $1,000 per week. Now, for some people, that's what they want to live off. Like for me, that would get nowhere near what I want to live off. But that's how easy it can be to grow your wealth, even through a very slow, methodical strategy. Some people want to fast track it, but it's just starting. Like buy that first one, but it's not about buying any property. If you don't buy right, you're going to be stuck with the lemon.
Yeah, for sure. And, unlike stocks, shares, bonds, that sort of thing, property is not easy it's not cheap to get in and out of. You're paying stamp duties, agent fees, that sort of thing. So you want to be making good decisions for the medium to long term. You don't want to be making decisions you've got to change a year down the track. So, guys, like I said, I can't stress enough. Pick up the phone, give ANJAY a call. He'll help you out.
If you want to social stalk me, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Insta.
There you go. But not TikTok, not yet.
Not yet, not TikTok. It's coming soon, they say.
ANJAY, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Lee. Much appreciated. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks, guys. Would love to chat to you soon.
No worries. Guys, that's it for today. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to catch the next one. Thank you very much.